What's up? I'm Jacob Litzo, your Elixir Mentor, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Elixir Mentor Podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to Elixir, from interviews with enthusiasts, pioneers in the community, to innovative projects and libraries shaping Elixir's future. So let's get started. Today I'm excited to have Wout, a senior engineer who is developing LiveSvelte. So Wout, welcome to the show. And can we start with just a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I would consider my background mostly Python and Django. So I've been doing like professional software engineer, like I've been that for like 8 years now, mostly Python, Django, and I switched to Elixir or got interested in Elixir like around 2 years ago, I would say. And yeah, I've been doing freelance basically for the last 5 years. That's sort of my professional background, I would say.
That's awesome. I love it. What originally brought you into Elixir 2 years ago?
I don't remember exactly, but I read about it somewhere, and then it looked pretty cool, and then I did Advent of Codes with it, and then I thought it was really really cool, and then I dropped it for a while, and because I was still working, and then wanted to start my own project, and then basically I needed something like LiveSvelte, and then looked into that, and that's how I rolled into it pretty much.
What were your like motivations behind creating LiveSvelte? Like, what didn't LiveView provide you that you wanted from Svelte?
Yeah, so pretty much I was doing Django and Svelte development at a company, and when I went to Elixir, I was doing LiveView, and then I was like, okay, this is really really cool, but I kind of miss like little like client side interactions that I want to do, or even really big ones where things are very straightforward with Svelte itself to do like client side stuff. But with LiveView, I was a little bit stuck on it. And they have some things like hooks, but it wasn't really like what I was used to. And then I looked into it, and then I found a talk by Ryan Cooke, who integrated LiveView with Svelte. And I was like, okay, this is really the way I want to go. But there was really no package for it. There was no like straightforward way of integrating it. You had to do it yourself, basically. So then I started working on LiveSvelte, and then yeah, at the same time there was this hackathon going on with for Svelte hackathon, where you could create like a project related to Svelte, and I was like, okay, this is the perfect perfect things are coming together. Like I'll just do the project, and then I have my package that I can use, and that's sort of where it got started.
That's awesome. How old is LiveSvelte? When was your first commit?
Yeah, I think it's around 1 year old now.
Okay,
So I
nice.
think maybe April last year. Yeah.
Okay, and what kind of like community support are you seeing? Are people jumping behind it? Do they love it?
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I've never built anything that people use or anything like that, except for like if you work at a company, of course, people are using the product, but like something that I made myself, and it's like been really great. And the last couple of days also has been really good. Like it was on Hacker News for like a day, and we got like 150 news stars. So
Oh, that's
people are really
amazing.
like, yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, and lots of positive feedback also. Like,
That's so
it's been really
cool.
good.
So, is this your
Yeah.
first kind of open source project that you've started and managed?
I have to think. I think it is. It's definitely the biggest one. But I think it is. Yeah, it's pretty much. I did like little things here and there, but that like just something that I built for myself, and that didn't really take off or anything. But yeah, this is pretty much the first one.
Okay, that's awesome. How do you find like organizing and communicating with, just other people that are contributing and things?
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. Like it's been good so far. Like people are very like, I feel in the Elixir community people are very friendly also, so you never get like bad like oh yeah it's not working or whatever. Like it's people are just very supportive overall. So it's been good. So it's additional work though. Like sometimes you're focused on other things. Like at the moment, I'm not really focused on LiveSvelte. I'm working basically, and then sometimes some things come in, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to spend time on this. But yeah, besides that, it's been really nice.
That's awesome. I will say the Elixir community is especially kind and welcoming to people
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
just with my YouTube channel, even if if I say something wrong, you don't get torn apart like you would expect in the software world, It's more supportive, and they'll just ask questions like, hey, why would you do it this way versus this way? And they create, a good discussion around it versus just kind of being an angry internet troll.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe it's a product of being a community like that is pretty small still, so you don't have like a lot of like people coming in randomly and then like just putting their angry take on whatever.
Yeah, people are more appreciative seeing people contributing to the community versus saying something wrong, I suppose. So
yeah,
I was reading through. Now I don't know that much about Svelte. I was reading through the documentation, or I should say I was reading through your README file on LiveSvelte, and you kind of talked about your end-to-end reactivity, which I'm guessing that's where you kind of leverage the power of like Phoenix LiveView and kind of open up the sockets. Can you kind of explain like a typical data flow scenario with how you're handling it and maintaining it?
Yeah. So the way I really think about it is like you just have like this reactivity circle. So in LiveView, you already have this. So you have your server who's pushing updates to the clients, and the client receives it, and then you can do something on the client, and you send a message back. And you have to have this circle. So from server to client, and LiveSvelte implements this circle too. So you have from the server to the client, you pass your data through props. So in the Svelte world, you have this props, which is like an attribute on a component, basically. That's the way I would describe it. And you can use these props in your client-side code or in your HTML. So let's say you increment one of the props, it will increment in the HTML. So you have your reactivity there. And so that's where you get the one-way arrow for the circle. And then the other way you get through the way you would expect it. So you have your Phoenix click and other things. And you have push events. So you can do it with Phoenix click, you can do it declaratively. So if you click on a button, if Phoenix click is attached, you send an event with maybe no data or with a little bit of data if you add a Phoenix value to it. Or you can do it programmatically. So you can, for example, have a function somewhere that does a push event with the same concept. So you have an event message and an event data. And so you have your arrow back. And so you have this really nice reactivity circle where the client can influence the server and the server can influence the client. And this is something that, if I think about it, like, for example, you have this project called SvelteKit, which is really great. I'm a big fan of SvelteKit. It's like a sort of a full stack way of building web applications with Svelte. So you have a server and a client both. But the problem that you sometimes have, that you maybe don't even realize, is that you don't have that reactivity circle. So you can request pages, and you have your page that is generated by the server, and then you have your client-side interaction and whatever, and then you can update it. But you don't have that circle back so you can do it from the client to the server. So you can do a request and you can do an API request. But you don't have the server to the client anymore. You have to basically refresh the page. And there are ways around it. So you have ways to update the client with the server. I forgot the name, but there are ways to do it. But it's not like a first-class citizen, I would say. With LiveView, it is really like the core of your application. You have this circle. So that's how I would describe it.
Okay. So you're just leveraging kind of the power of dynamically rendering only the dynamic components of like a static HTML template.
Yeah, sort of. I'm really leveraging like Elixir and Phoenix. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah.
So the core is there. Like LiveView is pretty amazing. Like I really like it. So the core is there, but it's missing like just at the edge of the clients your client side interactions, your client side data. That's really what you're missing, and that's something you get a LiveSvelte, I would say.
Okay, gotcha. When is there any like performance optimizations or techniques employed when you're trying to like be efficient with this reactivity?
So it's pretty much already taken care of. So if you like, so maybe I should talk a little bit about Svelte.
Yeah, that would be good.
Because just a second. Because with Svelte, it's already very performant. So Svelte is sort of like a framework like React or Vue. You probably heard of those.
Yep.
And it just does things differently. So instead of having your runtime being shipped to the browser, and then you have with React you have this, and then you have your React code, and the runtime knows how to handle it, and you have your shadow DOM and like lots of things. With Svelte, you basically write your Svelte code and it gets compiled away. So you only keep whatever you're using. So if you have a really simple client-side interaction, you keep just the client-side interaction in pure JavaScript. So it's already really small, your bundle size. And so for LiveSvelte, it's basically the same. So you write your Svelte components, and they get all compiled away. So the bundle size is really small unless you have like a really fancy thing going on. And you ship this to the browser, and that's it. So as long as the browser loads it in, then you can use it. You can start using it in LiveView. And there is no really cost to it except for that. So let's say you have if you have a really big bundle size, then there might be a big cost because you need to load it in the browser. But besides that, you don't really have a cost. That being said, there's also this thing called server-side rendering, which is also a feature of LiveSvelte where you render your components on the server. And the way that works is basically you do a call to Node, and Node gives you back the rendered HTML. And that introduces a cost because that is on demand. So you have you load in the page, or someone requests the page, and you get that page on demand. And so that introduces a little bit of latency because you need to do that call to Node. Well, if you don't have that server-side rendering, then that's not the case. So in that case, you do have some performance loss.
Okay. Well, and now like with Phoenix LiveView, that is like the whole thing, right? Everything is server-side rendered, and then you're only updating dynamic values. So what did you have to do to kind of like properly integrate Svelte with that concept?
Yeah, so it is pretty simple if you just look at it from the outside. So let's talk a little bit about LiveView, because then you get a little bit more context. So what LiveView does is you have your WebSocket, and it sends pure HTML basically. It is not pure, but it's pretty much pure. Then on the JavaScript side, you replace the current HTML with a new HTML, and that's it. And you can't do that with Svelte, because Svelte expects basically JSON data, basically like JavaScript aware data. So if you have a list, it expects a list. If you have a string, it expects a string. It's not pure HTML. So how do you get these two things together? Is basically you put it as a data attribute on your component. So you get your data. So in Elixir, you pass your data, you JSON encode it, you put it, you base 64 encode it, because then you have it's more safe for the HTML. You put it as a data attribute, and then then LiveView is like, okay, I did what you asked for, And then then you make a JSON LiveView hook, and then you have your JavaScript context, and you decode it. You base 64 decode, you base 64, you JSON decode it, and then you have your JSON data. And then Svelte is really nice in the way where you can just update props that are already existing on mounted components. So let's say this is not the first page load, this is the second page load. Then you can still update the props. So you have this data, you update the props, and suddenly Svelte is aware of what you passed in Elixir. And that's really the way it works. And the arrow back is even easier because the Phoenix click, it works out of the box. You don't have to do anything for that. And then you do a little bit of like the push event requires a little bit of attention, but not much. And that's also just a JavaScript function that LiveView already provides out of the box, and it just works. And then you have your circle, and it's like that's all you really need. And then of course you need to to make the package really nice to work with. You need to make it easy to install and things like that. But that's like secondary things. Like if you have that basic loop, then you're good to go.
That's great. That's awesome. So I was kind of, like I said, I don't know that much about Svelte, so bear with me here. Now with Svelte, you get a lot more out of the box as far as like UI animations and how it renders to the page. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So maybe in other libraries, you need to import like an animation library from somewhere else, but in Svelte it's already included because if you don't use it, it's not compiled, so you don't have the cost. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So like when you're rendering between live views, it's kind of difficult to make it look not jarring, right? Is that something that you kind of solve with Svelte?
That's something you could solve with Svelte. I think if you just want to make things a little bit more smooth, like let's say there's an animation for like you have a button or whatever, you can do a lot with just pure tailwinds, or you can do a lot with hooks. So I'm not saying like this replaces hooks and you should always use LiveSvelte. That's definitely not the case. I would say it's more like if you really get into a complex state, then you're like, okay, maybe I need something more, like something that's like a real JavaScript framework that's made for this kind of stuff. And that's where it comes in, I think.
Okay, gotcha. Now, pre-processing is kind of, I'm trying to think, like, I would compare this to kind of like the Seagull H templates kind of for LiveView, right? Is that a fair comparison of what pre-processing is in Svelte?
So when
you pre-process, yeah, like an HTML template and basically like first load data, correct?
In Svelte, pre-processing means something different. So it's more like let's say, let's talk a little bit more about Svelte. So what it can do. So let's say you have a button and you want to style that button, and you're not using Tailwind, you're using whatever. Then you can make a style tag at the bottom or whatever in your Svelte component. And this style is scoped to that button because you specified in the same file. So if you just do button, you write a CSS button, and you say it's black and or it's whatever color, and this won't leak to other Svelte files or HTML components because it's attached to it. So it just adds a little hash to whatever the CSS is that you wrote. So it would be button dash and then a hash, and then it would be scoped to it. And you get this for free. It's during the compile step this happens. But let's say you don't like CSS, you want to use something like Sass, or you want to use Stylus, or there's a bunch of like these alternative CSS preprocessors. That's where preprocessing comes in. So you can still specify instead of using regular CSS in my style tag. I want to use stylus. You can put it at the top, say, yeah, my language is stylus, and you can write stylus, and that's where the preprocessing comes in. And this is something you don't have in LiveView because, well, you can make it. You can add. You can make a stylus file, or you can make a SAS file, or whatever, and you can preprocess it too. But it doesn't. You have to configure it and stuff. But with LiveSvelte, it's pretty much you install SAS and you install whatever you want to use, and it will work. So it's if you want to have styled, if you want to have like an alternative like CSS preprocessor, it's very easy to do. So that's where the preprocessing comes in.
Okay.
So it's not exactly the same, but yeah.
Okay. See, I'm trying to understand front end web.
Yeah. Well, before we talk, you mentioned you're more of a backend. So just let me know where things are unclear, because I assume also people that are listening, they're more maybe focused and more.
It's great. I love the deep dive because for me, like my first front end stuff that I've really dove into is just Phoenix LiveView. And like I've worked on teams, obviously, with different front end technologies, but I just have to serve them, endpoints and sockets and data. So it's good to understand. Now, from the standpoint of props, how would you use props versus like the assigns map and things, or are they one and the same? Because it's kind of a stateful process, or it's your state essentially for the view.
They're pretty much the same. So they map one to one. So the way it would work, you just include so you have your live view, you have your sigil age, and then your live view code, and inside there you do whatever, and then you have a .svelte component, and that's LiveSvelte, and then you just pass how you would do it regularly. So you attach, you do like in our case it's props equals, and then put it between accolades, and then you just provided a map with the props that you want to provide to Svelte. So let's say you have a number prop, and you say number and then equals whatever the number, and this can come from your assigns. And then in your Svelte file you have prop, number, and that's it. And then you can use this number somewhere else in your Svelte file. And this is like a server synced prop. So that's pretty cool, because then if the number changes on the server, it will also change in your Svelte file.
Okay.
Which is that's pretty much the mapping between both.
Okay, nice. And then I saw that you have the slot interoperability, and that it's like almost working. And from what I understand, it's kind of like it would be like a function component, kind of, if I were to compare it to something in LiveView. You can kind of insert a component between in your slot tag. That it's true, but it's bigger than that also. So I'll preface it by saying don't use the feature unless you're not afraid of it being broken, because it's not supported out of the box. So Svelte has this concept of slots where you can put in things you define in a parent component inside a child component. Okay. And it's the same as function components, like you said, in LiveView. So you have this slot concept. And so I started thinking like, okay, wouldn't it be cool if you could just provide Elixir or like LiveView templating codes inside your Svelte? So these Svelte and LiveView, they are very overlapping. Like once you start working with it, actually it's very similar to this, and it's like the ideas are very, very much the same. So I started thinking, okay, let's overlap the slot component also. Let's try to make this work. And it sort of works, but it doesn't always work, because it's not really supported to provide it as the parent component, like the topmost components. But
whatever.
What kind of
it's so
limitations do you have with it right now? Like,
yeah, so sometimes if you provide certain things inside the slot, it will like render it somewhere else. If you keep it very basic, then it works. But otherwise, sometimes because these Svelte components, they get rendered down to just pure JavaScript code, and there's no real support for providing slots outside of the components directly, like props. Props does allow it, but slots don't. Then sometimes it renders it in the wrong place, and because it's just not supported.
okay.
That being said, with Svelte 5, the upcoming version, it might be supported because they have this new concept. I forgot the name of it, but you can sort of provide the slots outside and stuff. But it might not be supported, but it's still like.
So it's a Svelte problem, not an integration with LiveView problem.
Yeah,
okay,
it's definitely in this case it's a Svelte problem. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so Svelte fixes it; it'll be fixed and work in LiveSvelte.
Yeah, because if you can do the same as a prop, which with the prop you can just re-initialize the prop to this value, you can do while it's already mounted. Re-initialize the slot to this value. It doesn't. Svelte doesn't allow for it. Okay. And it's interesting because I saw that I think in the original versions, like the second or third version, I think the second version, it did work to do it, but I don't think it works in the current version. But it might work again in the next version. So we'll see.
Are you working on any awesome projects using LiveSvelte currently?
Not at the moment, but we might start using LiveSvelte at the workplace I'm at now.
Oh, nice.
We already use a little bit of Svelte, but it's just like it's not using LiveSvelte, but we're thinking of like replacing that with LiveSvelte and then doing a little bit more with it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It might be like I might be working on LiveSvelte a little bit.
That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah. And that also allows me to like see like the pain points a little bit more because I'm not working with it day to day. Mm-hmm. So there might be some things that are improved on the LiveSvelte front after I see it. So
yeah, how about like with deployment strategies? Is anything different when you're using LiveSvelte versus just LiveView?
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric. So you do need to, if you're not using server-side rendering, it's pretty much the same. So okay, let me go a little bit back. Maybe it's not exactly the same because you need to use ESBuild. So by default, if you start a new Phoenix project, you have a package that handles ESBuild for you. So it's you don't really have to worry about it. Mm-hmm. But with LiveSvelte, you have some custom integration which requires you to use ESBuild in the native way, where you import it as a npm package and then you use it that way instead of using it with a mix package. Okay. And so you need to take care of that, and you need to make also sure that this runs during your deployment step, because otherwise it just won't work. But that's something you need to do anyway. Even if you're not using LiveSvelte, if you have some custom things that you need with ESBuild, then you will need to take care of this anyway. And this is also the main supported way of doing custom things. So I'm using the same things as the mix documentation says you should do. So that's at least is nice. So that's one step. And then if you're using server-side rendering, you should make sure that you have Node installed in your production environment when you're running it. So not during your build step, but also during your when you're running it during your runtime step or whatever, which is like basically the entire time. So you have to have Node installed. Otherwise, you can't do server-side rendering because there's no Node to call. And those are the two main things basically.
So can you install Node just in with inside the Mix XES, or do you have to kind of run it through like a Docker script, or how would you do that?
Yeah. So yeah, depending, like if you, for example, using Fly, you're using Docker, and then you would need to install it in your Docker script.
Okay.
But if you're like, let's say you're using an Amazon server somewhere and you just SSH into it. As long as you have Node installed, it's enough. If there's a way to access Node, it's enough.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of always using Docker, especially for production stuff. It just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, definitely.
I love that. So going through your README, you have some pretty cool demos in there. You show off just like a very real-time chat application.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you leverage more with that instance than you do out of the box with like LiveView? Because the real-time stuff is obviously the same, but what makes that chat demo so impressive that it's Svelte?
Yeah, that's a good question. So indeed, with LiveView, you're like, okay, yeah, this is perfect technology to make a chat application. It's like you're gonna, it's already, it's easy to sync stuff, but then it's like, okay, on the UI front, like how people use it, it's still nice to have like little interactions here and there. Like for example, when you're chatting with the LiveSvelte application, or like the application that uses LiveSvelte, you have a little bit of animations whenever you're sending a text. And so you send a text and there's like a bubble coming up. Instead of just in LiveView, it would just show up, or you would have to use a hook, and then you maybe can use an animation. But okay, that's another example of like, okay, you can solve it with a hook, like why you have to use LiveSvelte, and that's true. But then, okay, I also want this. Like, I want to be able to see how many characters I'm typing. It's like, okay, and I want to see like a live feed of that. Right? I want to type, and I want to see the number increase, and I want to remove the characters, and I want to see it decrease. And it's like, yeah, you can do that with hooks too. But and then, okay, you get into this situation where it's like, you have a lot of these like little interactions that you want, and you're like, okay, maybe it's best to use like a front-end framework for it. And then that's where it comes in. And that's really where it comes in. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool because I'm making, like, I have a YouTube project right now where we're doing a GitHub gist clone. And I do line numbers, but it's all dynamic with, whatever's on the person's screen, obviously. So I have to do all of that with JS hooks. And if I were to add more things like character count and all of that, you're saying it comes with Svelte? You don't have to write all the manual hooks, or how does that work?
Yeah. So it would basically be, so Svelte is very declarative. So let's say you have a box, an input box, where you're typing whatever, and you want to know how many characters are in that box. You would bind a variable to that box, to the value of that box, and then you have that variable available anywhere. So that variable contains the text of the box, and you can use it however you want. So you can take the length of that and display it somewhere, and that's it. And it's like it's really simple. So you would have just between accolades, you would have linked that value or that variable, and it would display the numbers of characters. And so it's like 2 lines of code basically to make that work. So you don't need to do a lot of things for it.
That's really awesome. It kind of makes me, I'm going to have to check out LiveSvelte after this now. And
yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. All right. So community feedback has obviously been awesome, and you were just featured on Hacker News, which is pretty awesome. I'm going to have to look up that article. What was the gist of it? Did you write it or did someone else write it?
Yeah, someone else wrote it. And I saw like 3 days ago or something, or 4 days ago, I saw like a little uptick in GitHub stocks, and I was like, where is this coming from? And then I saw he created the article and shared it on Reddit. And then I think someone else reshared it on Hacker News, and then it really took off. And yeah, it's just like the article is about how you can use LiveView, and LiveView is already really powerful, but sometimes you have these like little things that you need to do, and LiveSvelte helps with that. And yeah, it's been really great, and the feedback has been like a mix between, yeah, I've been using it and it's really good, or like, okay, I will check it out, it seems really good. And then sometimes there's also people saying like, yeah, but you can do this with Next. Like, just use Next, or why don't you make a Svelte kit application? And I think those people are missing a little bit about Elixir.
Yeah.
And like, obviously between us, it's like, yeah, okay, we're using Elixir, and it's like that's the thing to use, and it's awesome. But yeah, that's a little
Yeah,
bit missing in the conversation
there's
sometimes.
pieces that you miss when you just use other technologies. Like a project that I was on, we were using Svelte, but I was just doing back end. And when you're completely in the Svelte world, it makes working with channels and sockets a little more difficult. You don't really get that automatic real-time socket connection that you get using LiveView.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And man, so many features. Like, also coming from a Django world. So Django is like Ruby on Rails, server-side render me a web page, or make an API endpoint, things like that. But it doesn't have this concept of these processes, and you can talk to each other, and like this. I mean, all the obvious things that come with Elixir, and it's really, for me, it really changed the paradigm of what a web server should be. Because I always thought, okay, a web server should be very simple. It should just it's an endpoint, and you render some HTML, and that's pretty much what it should do. And it shouldn't do more than that. Like, do one thing good, and that's it. But with Elixir, it's really changed my idea of like what a web server should be. So now I'm more in the camp of like a web server should actually do a lot of things very well, and it should be very robust.
Yes. So like a web server should do all the heavy lifting, and your front end should be as dumb as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like another issue that I ran into, another project I worked on, it was like a PWA. So we used Vue, and then we had an Elixir backend. Every time that the web browser, wasn't front and center, reconnecting to the sockets was a huge pain in the butt. We would always lose our chat socket, and we'd always have to reconnect, and it just wasn't a good user experience. It was very hacked together to keep our socket connections open.
Yeah. Actually, like now that you mentioned PWA, there's a project in the community, I think Tony Dang, I think he's called, and he made PWA with LiveSvelte. And
that's cool.
And it works really well. So it uses basically CRDTs to synchronize the state, because if you're offline, you're still updating the state somehow, and it uses CRDTs to synchronize that. And then LiveSvelte to really bridge the two things together, because you have this client-side stuff and you have this server-side stuff. And so he did a project with it, and I thought, like, before it was created, I was like, okay, yeah, LiveView is probably only like offline only and that kind of stuff. Online only.
Right.
You don't really have any offline stuff and like navigation and stuff. But I mean, it really shows that it's possible. Like, if you just put in a little bit of effort, it's very doable. So
that's really awesome, because I'm smart enough to use other people's technologies, but I kind of like, with just the server side rendering, you're very limited with offline support. So that's really cool. I have to. What was his name?
Let me just double check before I.
Okay, no worries.
Let's see, it's linked in the LiveSvelte repository also. It's at the bottom of the page, local first to do app, and it's by Tony Dang, and it's called LiveView Svelte PWA.
Oh, perfect, awesome. I'm gonna have
to. Yeah, I know. Also make the video of it, like showcasing it and stuff, and it's really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's using YJS. Okay.
Yeah. That's another thing. Like, if you're using LiveSvelte, you have access to the entire NPM ecosystem inside your code, and that's something like incredible, because it's like it's old. Very, very expansive set of libraries and things you can add, and you can still do it with hooks, of course. You can like import packages there too, but it's not as native. The feeling is not as native as with LiveSvelte, where you can just import it at the top of the page and just use it.
You definitely feel like you're going into another project when you're writing your JS hooks, right?
Yeah, that's what I feel too. Yeah.
You're in a separate environment.
Yeah. And I feel even like I get transported back a little bit to the past, like with jQuery and stuff. Like you're using pure JavaScript, and it's like, oh man, like sometimes I just want to write declaratively. And maybe I mentioned it before, but with Svelte, it's also a very declarative language, comparable to LiveView. And so you just want to say, this should go here, and this is what this is, and figure it out for me. And with hooks, you're more like, okay, let me get the value, let me do things with it, and let me update the value in this case. And it's like, like I want to just like use modern things, like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually excited. I'm gonna give myself a reason to check out LiveSvelte after this now, because it sounds like it's a lot of fun and pretty cool.
So one thing sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just one little thing I want to mention. So I also made a video introducing it, showing like code examples, and I go through like the basic ones to like more fancy ones. And it's also linked in the LiveSvelte project. So that really gives you more of a real idea of what the capabilities are and where you should use it and where you probably shouldn't use it also.
Okay, nice. I was just going to ask someone that isn't familiar with Svelte, like where should I get started? What do you recommend to start using LiveSvelte?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend the video.
Okay.
I think, let me see where it is linked. It should be on there's in the resources section of the README, there's a YouTube introduction.
Okay, perfect.
That shows a little bit about it.
And for everyone watching, I linked Wout's links in the description below, so you can find his website, his Twitter handle, and then I did LiveSvelte repo. So hopefully we'll get you some more stars. It looks like you have quite a few already. Yeah, 778. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. It's definitely, I mean, okay, stars, whatever, but it's like, it shows you like that people are really interested in this.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
It is cool. Well, just projects like this help the Elixir community so much because it'll help bring more awareness just to what Elixir is and what you can leverage.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
I think it also bridges a little bit the gap. If you're coming from a front-end world, I think it's also very useful because then it's pretty easy to set up and you can start using Svelte the regular way you're using it basically. Like if you just make sure that you include your components inside your sigil age code, and then you can use Svelte regularly even without using any of the LiveView features, and then it's the step is easier to make and
for sure
to go to the backend also.
Yeah, so do everything the way you're used to it, and then you can slowly start integrating the LiveView pieces.
And I think more in a educational sense rather than I'm going to make a new app and it's going to use this from the beginning. That's something I wouldn't recommend. But if you want to learn about LiveView or just Elixir in general and all these things, you can start building visual things and then just adding little server things to it. And I think that's really nice too. So.
Yeah, that is nice. Now, I know you mentioned where you're currently working, they're already using Svelte for a lot of the front end. If they start going the LiveSvelte route, what do you see that process looking like for making that conversion? Is it going to be a big project or relatively simple to make that side step?
So actually, they're not using Svelte a lot. They're just using it. It's basically a Phoenix app.
Okay.
That they're currently using. But they were using a little bit of Svelte inside Phoenix app without using LiveSvelte. which you can do. Like you can just like set it up very easily, and you don't have to use LiveSvelte. You can use your custom integration with Svelte.
Okay.
At the end of the day, LiveSvelte is not like a complicated thing. Also, it's just nicely packaged up and like for people to use, ready to use.
That makes sense.
So it won't. So in this case, it won't be a big transition because we have the Svelte file already, and we just need to import LiveSvelte and install it, and then we can use the same Svelte file even. So.
Okay. Well, so from the perspective of, let's pretend someone already has a Phoenix Elixir backend and they have a separate front end Svelte project. What would that look like, do you think, if you were to fully jump into LiveSvelte?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. So I would say transport, like if that's the thing and you want to do the transition to a pure LiveView app, do the LiveView app first.
Okay.
Just do all the logic that you have in Svelte, do it in LiveView, and wherever you see certain cases like, okay, it's not enough to use LiveView, we need like a little bit of client-side stuff, or like a lot of client-side stuff even, then I would say, okay, introduce LiveSvelte to it, and you can probably reuse a lot of the code. You just need to be aware of like the props, and that the props will be server-side reactive and that kind of things.
Okay.
But
that's a smart approach. Build it the way it would work in LiveView.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're gonna have this Frankenstein kind of thing where it's like, why are we doing this in LiveSvelte? Well, we could as well do it in LiveView, and there is some disadvantages to using in LiveSvelte because you're going out of your Elixir contexts. Like in LiveView, you can write Elixir code in your LiveView code, and you can't do that in LiveSvelte, of course, because you're using Svelte files. So you're losing a little bit of that close integration with it sometimes. So I wouldn't recommend it that way. I would just move everything LiveView and then see case by case where you can use LiveSvelte. Yeah.
Well, what's nice is you can just use LiveSvelte where you need it then too, right? So majority LiveView app, and then if you need, a little bit of Svelte to make things, if you have more client side animations or work to do, instead of writing a ton of hooks, you can leverage Svelte a little bit.
Exactly. So it's like, it's the way it's designed. It's very like, use it wherever you need, but then use the regular LiveView, regular stuff you're used to wherever else. And it's even like it has support for non-LiveView pages too, so you can use it in a regular template too, because that supports function components. And Svelte is LiveSvelte is a wrapper. It's basically a wrapper around Svelte, and it uses a function component, so you can use it in a regular way too. And okay, you won't have any. The props will just be static, so you won't be able to update them because you're not using LiveView, you're not having that WebSocket connection. But if you don't need it, then it's perfectly possible. And there were packages before that did this already. I want to mention. So there was like Svelte X, I think it's called.
Okay.
That does this, where you can just use it in a dat view, and there was another one, but I'm forgetting the name now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, as you gain popularity, you're going to start getting more contributors and everything. What do you suggest to people that want to get involved and start contributing? Do you have like a feature list people can grab from to work on things, or how are you organizing the project?
I would say it's not very organized at the moment. So I think I have two things in my mind now that I would recommend people work on if they want to contribute. The first thing is better SSR integration, and by that I mean maybe having the node thing of the package be replaceable by something else. For example, Dino, or using Bun. And I think Bun could be a big improvement, because Bun is a lot faster than Node in theory. So if you could just plug in different server-side rendering engines, as the way I would describe it. That would be a big thing.
Okay.
And then the other thing is VIT integration. So I don't know how to say it, but VITE integration, which is a sort of an alternative to ESBuild. And it's a little bit better overall than ESBuild. It does better code splitting and that kind of thing. So let's say you're on one page, it only should load in the Svelte components that is being used on that page, and not the ones on other pages. At the moment, if you're using ESBuild, everything is compiled in one bundle and served to the browser. So if you have like a big bundle size, this can be a big thing. And there's other like little niceties, like Vit is just a little bit more supported nowadays than ESBuild, I would say.
Okay.
But the reason why I'm using ESBuild is because that's the recommended approach by the mix documentation. So I feel like staying as close to that is the right approach. Mm-hmm. But if you want to use something more custom, like not native, or like, okay, it's maybe native, but it's like not recommended by the mix documentation, you can still use it. So yeah, so those are the two things I would say people want to contribute.
That makes
sense.
But
it's not documented somewhere.
Okay. So, I feel like that is the hardest thing with open source, is documenting like a feature list and what you're working on, and having a good way to just document those things. Do you currently do you have a Slack channel or Discord channel or anything where there's open dialogue?
Yeah, at this point that might be an idea, but I don't have at the moment.
Okay.
But I think it's still good enough to create an issue. Mm-hmm. If you just want to, or even if you have a question, create a discussion on GitHub. Everything's sort of like on GitHub at the moment. And sometimes people ask me a question on Twitter or through email, and that's also fine. But yeah, maybe it's something to think about. Maybe at some point I'll create like a Slack or like a Discord or something.
But then it also comes into how much time do you have, right?
Yeah, that's the thing also. But okay, it sort of creates a community that's like self-sufficient, and they can sort out the problems themselves, and maybe that gives me more time. And
that's so true.
I'm not answering all the questions, and they're answering each other's questions. So
yeah. How do you find yourself pretty busy just answering questions on GitHub, or is it pretty moderate right now?
It's still pretty moderate. I mean, for example, today I got a question or like a feature request, but it's very rare. Maybe once a week something comes in, and then it's very easy to answer. So it's still very doable.
I know you mentioned Vit instead of ESBuild, and now I forgot the other one that you mentioned. Is there any major features on the roadmap in the future that you are excited about or currently working on?
So I think once Svelte 5 comes out, the slot support I'm really excited about.
Okay.
Because it allows you to have your Svelte context and do things there, and then put you back into the Elixir context inside the components. So for example, like for things like modals and stuff, it's really nice. So you can have a Svelte modal because it's like an animation maybe comes up and things are happening, and then you can close it. But inside your modal, you have maybe just regular LiveView code. And you can even like go a little bit further and go a little bit crazy and say, inside my Elixir code, I have another Svelte component, and in that I have a slot, and it's like sort of a recursive thing. And I don't know if it's possible. I would have to check if it's possible even with Svelte 5, but if that works, then I think a big disadvantage is also solved, because then you're like, okay, I can create like these little components, wrap them with Svelte, and then I still have my Elixir context, and I can do regular LiveView things, and that's a big thing. I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about, definitely.
Yeah, that sounds like it'd be pretty awesome. That'd be cool. So fingers crossed, Svelte 5 supports slots.
Definitely.
What is slot integration? What is it called? Just interoperability?
Yeah. So the thing is with Svelte 5, they're doing slots a little bit differently. where you're not putting it inside the tags, but you're defining it somewhere else, and then you're providing it inside the parent, or like inside the component.
Okay.
And if you, in my mind, I'm thinking about it, if I can define it outside of it, then I can also provide it in my most parent components and maybe even change it. In theory. So maybe it's not possible. Maybe I'm just making things up. But it will be something definitely to look at if it's possible. I think it will be a big thing.
I love that. Now, on your website, I know we were talking about mostly like the Svelte Live or LiveSvelte. What is the little like multiplayer game you have going on? I'm kind of just curious.
So that's territories.io. So with a Z at the end because territories was taken. So it's sort of like it's based upon another game called generals.io.
Okay.
And it's basically like you capture territory and other opponents in a multiplayer environment with 8 people. That's the standard game, but you can also play 1 versus 1. And you try to increase your troop size and like your towers. You can capture towers and increase the troop size that way, and then and try to sort of win the game that way. And it's sort of an example of like how far you can go with LiveView nowadays, because I feel.
It's all written in LiveView?
Yes, it's with LiveSvelte and LiveView. So it is basically all my game logic is written in Elixir. So I have one big game object with all the data that I need to display the board correctly and do updates. And then it's rendered with LiveSvelte. And it works really, really, really well. So the LiveSvelte part of it is basically it's a canvas element with and you're rendering it, and I'm using pixie.js, which is like a 2D rendering engine for canvas, which is really performant. And you can do like animations and stuff with it and like lots of things.
That's really cool.
And it integrates really well. So you, for example, every time you make a move, 2 things happen. You optimistically update the move because you want to show it in the client, and you send a message to the server that the move was made, and then the move gets made on the server and it gets updated for all the other clients. And it's a very enjoyable way to write like games. Still...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention. So it's still like if you want to do like, I'd say like 60 FPS games, like running around on the map and like shooting each other, for example, you're gonna have to do a lot of client-side prediction because you're gonna want to do like, if I shoot someone, I want to see them die because I shot them, but it takes 100 milliseconds for that to happen on the server and come back, and I don't want that to happen. So you want to do a lot of game logic on the clients, and that's where it's still for me in the experimental phase, because you have to write your logic either in Elixir or in JavaScript. Okay, let me go a little bit of a tangent, like because I'm very excited about this idea actually. So I don't know if you're familiar with Gleam. It's like an alternative.
I've checked it out. I haven't played around with it.
Yeah, so if you're using Gleam, you can write code next to your Elixir code and use it in Elixir, but it also compiles to JavaScript. So then I'm thinking, okay, I write all my logic in Gleam, and I can use it on the server and the client without having to write it twice, and so it will be 100% correct, and I won't make a mistake there.
That's really cool.
And then that idea is really cool, because then you're really leveraging like the beam, and you're also leveraging all this front-end work that's been going on, and you're making sure your game logic is correct because it's all in one language, basically.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
This caught my eye because I actually have some personal side projects I'm working on that are some games. So I've been reading on how you properly architect game servers and all of that. And so, yeah, I was interested. And then I saw it was kind of like a MMO. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, are you using gen servers for all the game state then? Do you have like a user gen server and then a game gen server, or how are you doing that?
So exactly. So I'm using just a game server for a gen server for the game server.
Hmm.
So each game is its own gen server and
Yep.
it has its own state. Like it builds up a map with a game object that contains a board. And it's also like each play. Another thing, interesting thing is like each player contains its own board because in this game you need to explore the map and you need to see what you already explored, and so you have your own version of the map for each player and stuff. And
Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome. That's very cool.
yeah.
Is this open source? Can I check out the code or no?
Uh, Currently, it's not. I
Okay.
was thinking of open sourcing it, but the original idea was sort of a mix of both, like creating a showcase of LiveSvelte and seeing like how far can you take it.
Hmm.
Which it's really like I thought it was possible, and it is possible. So it's a nice experiment that shows that you can do a lot. But it's also maybe a way to monetize at some point. So that's why I didn't open source it.
For
But
sure.
it could be that in the future I open source it if I decide.
No,
Okay,
that's
like
very cool. I might have some questions for you in the near future.
yeah, definitely, yeah. Like I don't mind open sourcing it to like individuals and stuff, but I don't want to just put it out in the
No,
world
that
yet.
makes sense for sure.
Um,
No, I love that. Yeah, it caught my eye because my business partner and I, we're creating a pretty cool product that I'm not quite ready to talk about, but I'm pretty excited about it. And
mhm.
it's in the gaming world, so it's gonna be
Okay.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll just send over a message and
yeah,
I'll
for
answer
sure.
anything that I know.
We have Maxwell that just chatted. He said, "Very good project that he learned Svelte just for this."
Nice. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm like for me, I'm really in between the two worlds. So like, I really like Svelte, and I really like Elixir and LiveView and the Beam. So for me, it was like the perfect project to do, and also it's like if you know LiveView, it's like it gives you like a really good basic introduction to Svelte already because the overlap is so good, and both declarative and both like work in very similar ways. So
that's awesome.
yeah, it's nice to hear.
Yeah, that's very cool. And then I'm guessing is GeoQuest also using LiveSvelte?
No, that just uses regular Svelte kit.
Just
So
Svelte.
that's
Okay.
before I found out about LiveView and things like
Okay.
that. And it's also it's a purely offline game, so it also wouldn't make sense to use LiveView.
That okay.
Um, so
That's cool. So do you have a lot of gaming dev in your work history, or is it just kind of hobby and interest for you?
just kind of hobby and interest. But I like when I was studying like in college, I did like a game development kind of course.
Okay.
So and I've been playing games my entire life. I've been like all sorts of games, and I still play games today.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested in it, both on the game playing side and on the game development side. But I didn't do a lot of game projects, just like GeoQuest is one and Territories is one, and like small things like I made like a Minesweeper like a long time ago. But that's
Okay.
pretty much it.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to check out Territories. Very cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And nowadays there's also some players playing it because for the last year almost no like there were no players because it's a multiplayer game, so you need at least two players.
Mm,
And so you go to the website and it's like, oh, there's no one online. Okay, close. And so nowadays it's like a little bit because of the Hacker News post. It's got a little bit more attention. So
that's cool.
so
Very cool.
we'll be
Can
playing
I
next year.
open up two browsers and play with myself?
Yeah,
Perfect.
but you'll have to open up not two tabs but two browsers. Otherwise it won't work because
Gotcha.
it sees the same cookies and stuff. So you will have the same player if you're
Oh,
opening a new tab.
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Very cool. Well, is there any last words of wisdom for people? And I'm guessing the best way to reach out to you is Twitter. But if you have any things to add.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Twitter is probably the best way, or email also works. I think, yeah, words of wisdom. I don't know. I don't think I have anything like. It's maybe like if you have an idea for something and you really believe in it, like try to go for it, because I was really convinced of this thing, and it's nice to get some like confirmation on that also.
Yeah.
So sometimes, yeah, and carve out a little bit of time if you have the chance to maybe quit your job a little bit, because I did actually, just to build other things. Like I had an idea for something and that didn't really go anywhere, but then with LiveSvelte that did go somewhere. And so like explore a little bit of like the space you're in and like build stuff. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's good advice. It's hard because it's scary to dial back if you have a day job, but if you want to fully jump into like a dream or an idea, it's a scary leap.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not always possible also. So
yeah, because I've like the last 3 years of my life, I've been doing basically just like freelance work and my own projects. It's more enjoyable, but it's also a little more stressful too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's definitely, you feel like you're jumping off a bridge somewhere and then hoping like you'll land somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I haven't been happier. And as long as you live somewhere cool where you can get out and relax, then you're good.
Yeah, that's the end goal. That's the end goal.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, well, thank you so much, Wout. This was an awesome talk. I learned a ton, and I apologize for just unloading probably really dumb questions on you, but I learned a lot for the Svelte angle of things and front end dev in general.
Yeah, it's great to be, and also like for me, it's also to put my mind in order a little bit, to talk about these kind of things that I've been thinking about. It's also nice to talk about it to someone else, and even like dumb questions are good because it's like it gives me a little bit of structure to think about this kind of things. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll have to do this again. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.